She hid in the Korean Mafia boss's car to avoid her abusive ex. He whispered, "I'll protect you. Please don't see me. Please don't see me." Adele whispered the words like a prayer as she dove into the back seat of the sleek black car, her hands trembling so hard she could barely grip the door handle. The parking garage was dimly lit, and she'd spotted Kofi's silhouette near the elevator, her ex-boyfriend, who'd made the last 6 months of her life absolute hell. She couldn't face him again, not today, not ever. The door clicked shut behind her, and she pressed herself against the leather seats, trying to make herself invisible. Her heart was racing, her mind spinning with panic. Maybe he hadn't seen her. Maybe she could just wait here until he left, and then... You know, most people ask before getting into someone's car. Adele froze. The voice came from the front seat, low and calm, with a slight accent that made each word sound deliberate. She slowly lifted her head and met a pair of dark eyes in the rearview mirror. The man sitting in the driver's seat was watching her with an expression somewhere between amusement and concern. I'm so sorry," she stammered, already reaching for the door handle. "I didn't think anyone was in here. I just needed to..." Wait, he turned in his seat to face her properly, and she got her first real look at him. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled black hair, an expensive suit that probably cost more than her rent. Everything about him screamed money and power. "Are you in trouble?" She hesitated. Through the tinted windows, she could see Kofi pacing near the elevator, his phone pressed to his ear. He was looking around, searching, her stomach twisted into knots. "My ex," she said quietly. He's out there. I can't let him find me." The man's expression shifted, something hardening in his eyes. He studied her face for a moment, probably taking in the fear she couldn't hide, then reached over and locked all the doors. With a soft click. "Stay down," he said simply. Adele didn't need to be told twice. She slid lower in the seat, her breathing shallow, as she watched the man turn back around. He pulled out his phone and started typing something, completely calm, like having a random woman hide in his car was just another Thursday afternoon. Minutes passed. They felt like hours. She could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears, could feel the panic trying to claw its way up her throat. What if Kofi came over? What if he saw her? What if... "He's gone," the man said, glancing at the rearview mirror again. "Your ex just got into the elevator." Adele let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She sat up slowly, peering out the window to confirm. The parking garage was empty now, just rows of silent cars and concrete pillars. Relief washed over her so intensely that she felt tears prick at her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Thank you so much. I'll get out now. I promise I'm not some crazy person who just..." "I'm Chin-Hwa," he interrupted, turning to face her again. "And you don't look crazy. You look scared." Something about the directness in his voice made her pause. Most people danced around topics like this, pretended not to notice when something was wrong. But this stranger, Chin-Hwa, he just said it plainly. "I'm Adele," she offered, managing a weak smile. "From Madagascar, and yes, I'm very scared." "Madagascar," he repeated, and for the first time, a small smile touched his lips. "Long way from home." "Sometimes distance isn't enough," she said before she could stop herself. The words came out bitter, heavy with meaning. Chin-Hwa was quiet for a moment, his eyes searching her face like he was reading a story written there. Then he pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and held it out to her. "If he bothers you again," he said, his voice dropping lower, "call me, I mean it." Adele took the card with shaking fingers. It was simple, elegant. Just a name and a phone number. No company logo, no title. Just Kang Chin-Hwa in both English and Korean characters. "I can't ask you to..." "You're not asking," he said firmly. "I'm offering. There's a difference." She stared at him, this stranger who just offered her protection, without knowing anything about her situation, without asking for anything in return. It felt surreal. People in Boston weren't usually this forward, this willing to get involved. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you help me?" Chin-Hwa's expression shifted into something she couldn't quite read. "Let's just say, I understand what it's like to need protection, and not have it. Nobody should feel that way." The weight in his voice suggested a story, something painful buried beneath those words. Adele found herself wanting to know more, but before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening slightly. "I have to go," he said. "But I meant what I said. Keep that card. Use it. If you need to." Adele nodded, clutching the card like a lifeline. She opened the door and stepped out into the cool garage air, her legs still unsteady. Before she closed the door, she looked back at him. "Thank you, Chin-Hwa. Really." He gave her a small nod, something almost protective in his gaze. Be safe, Adele, from Madagascar. She watched as he started the engine and drove away, the expensive car disappearing up the ramp and into the afternoon sunlight. For a long moment, she just stood there, staring at the business card in her hand and wondering what kind of man offers protection to a complete stranger. The kind who understands danger, probably. The kind who knows what it means to be afraid. She slipped the card into her purse and headed for her own car, her mind still spinning. She had no idea that this chance encounter would change everything. That Chin-Hwa wasn't just some wealthy businessman with a kind heart. That the protection he offered came with complications she couldn't begin to imagine. All she knew was that for the first time in months, someone had made her feel safe, and that feeling was dangerously addictive. 3 days later, Adele was restocking shelves at the small bookstore where she worked when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Kofi had been calling from different numbers lately, trying to trick her into answering, but something made her look at the message. This is Chin-Hwa. Just checking that you're okay. No need to respond if you don't want to. She stared at the text for a solid minute, her coworker Brittany leaning over her shoulder with interest. Who's that? Brittany asked, her eyebrows raised. And why are you smiling like that? I'm not smiling, Adele protested, but she could feel her cheeks warming. She was smiling. When had that happened? Girl, you are definitely smiling. Spill. Adele sighed and gave Brittany the abbreviated version, the parking garage, the hiding, the mysterious man in the expensive suit who'd offered protection. By the end of it, Brittany was practically bouncing with excitement. That's like something out of a movie, she said. A hot rich guy swoops in to save you from your terrible ex. Please tell me you're going to text him back. I don't know, Adele said, chewing her bottom lip. It feels weird, like, I don't know anything about him. He could be anyone. He could also be exactly what you need right now, Brittany pointed out. Someone who actually cares about your safety. When was the last time Kofi made you feel protected instead of afraid? Never, Adele thought. Not once in their entire relationship. She looked at her phone again, reading Chin-Hwa's message one more time. It was thoughtful, non-intrusive. He wasn't demanding a response or trying to push himself into her life. He was just checking in, making sure she was all right. I'm okay. Thank you for asking, and thank you again for the other day. She hit send. Before she could overthink it, the response came back almost immediately. I'm glad. If you're free this weekend, I'd like to buy you coffee, as an apology for startling you in the car. No pressure. Brittany squealed before Adele could even process the message. He wants to see you again? Say yes. Say yes. I barely know him, Adele protested weakly, but her heart was already doing that stupid fluttery thing. That's what coffee dates are for, getting to know people. And besides, Brittany's expression turned serious. You've been so isolated since Kofi. Maybe it's time to let someone new in. Someone who doesn't make you feel like you have to hide. The words hit harder than Adele expected. Brittany was right. She had been isolated. Kofi had systematically cut her off from friends, from family back home, from anyone who might tell her the truth about how unhealthy their relationship was. And even after she'd finally gathered the courage to leave him, she'd stayed in that isolated bubble, too afraid to trust anyone new. But Chin-Hwa, he'd helped her without asking for anything, without making her feel obligated or guilty. Maybe coffee wouldn't be so bad. Coffee sounds nice. Saturday afternoon? Perfect. I know a place in Cambridge. I'll send you the address. Adele spent the rest of her shift in a distracted haze, half excited and half terrified about what she'd just agreed to. A date with a man she'd met under the strangest possible circumstances. What was she thinking? But when Saturday came, she found herself standing outside a tiny Korean cafe in Cambridge, watching through the window as Chin-Hwa sat at a corner table, reading something on his phone. He was dressed more casually today. Dark jeans, a simple black sweater, but he still had that air of quiet authority about him. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door. He looked up immediately, a smile crossing his face that made him look younger, less intimidating. Adele, you came. You sound surprised, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Maybe a little, he admitted. I thought you might change your mind, decide that meeting a stranger from a parking garage was a terrible idea. I almost did, she confessed. My friend Brittany talked me into it. Remind me to thank Brittany, he said, and there was something warm in his voice that made her relax slightly. They ordered traditional Korean teas that Chin-Hwa recommended, along with some pastries. As they waited, an awkward silence settled between them. Adele fidgeted with her napkin, trying to think of something to say that didn't sound completely ridiculous. So, Chin-Hwa started, his fingers drumming lightly against the table. Tell me about Madagascar. I've never met anyone from there before. And just like that, the conversation started flowing. Adele found herself talking about growing up in Antananarivo, about the music and the food and the way the ocean looked at sunset. Chin-Hwa listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed he was actually paying attention. What brought you to Boston? He asked eventually. Graduate school, she said. Art history. I wanted to study museum curation, and I don't know, I wanted an adventure, wanted to see more of the world. And instead, you got Kofi, Chin-Hwa said quietly. Adele's smile faded. Yeah, instead, I got Kofi. You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to, he said quickly. I want to understand, so I can help if you need it. She studied him for a moment, this man who'd inserted himself into her life with such unexpected kindness. What do you do, Chin-Hwa? For work, I mean. Your card didn't say. His expression shifted, becoming more guarded. I handle business matters. For my family. It's complicated. Complicated how? He hesitated, and Adele got the sense he was weighing how much to tell her. Finally, he said, my family has certain interests, businesses that require discretion. Help manage those. It wasn't really an answer, but she decided not to push. They'd only just met, after all. Everyone had secrets. They talked for 2 more hours, the cafe filling up and emptying around them. Chin-Hwa told her about growing up in Seoul, about moving to the States for college, and never quite fitting in anywhere. Adele shared stories about her studies, about the paintings she loved, about her dreams of one day working at a major museum. When they finally left, the sun was setting, painting the Cambridge streets in shades of gold and amber. I had a really good time, Adele said, and she meant it. For the first time in forever, she'd felt normal, like herself again. So did I, Chin-Hwa said. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His fingers were warm, his grip gentle. Can I see you again? Yes, she said, the word coming out before her brain could interfere. I'd like that. He smiled, really smiled, and lifted her hand to his. Lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, sweet in a way that made her chest feel tight. I'll call you, he promised. She watched him walk away, her hand still tingling where he'd kissed it. This was crazy. This was moving too fast. This was exactly what she needed. Chin-Hwa kept his promise. He called the next day, and the day after that, and soon they were texting constantly, little messages throughout the day that made Adele smile at her phone like a teenager. He'd send her pictures of interesting things he saw, random thoughts that popped into his head, questions about her favorite books and movies. It felt easy, natural, like they'd known each other much longer than a couple of weeks. Their second date was at the Museum of Fine Arts, which Chin-Hwa insisted on because he wanted to understand her passion for art. He listened patiently as she explained the brushwork techniques in various paintings, never once looking bored or checking. His phone. You light up when you talk about this, he observed as they stood in front of a Monet. Your whole face changes. Adele felt her cheeks warm. Art makes sense to me. People, not so much, but art, I understand. Maybe that's why you're so good at seeing beauty, he said softly. You look deeper than most people. They grabbed lunch at a small Vietnamese restaurant in Dorchester afterward, sitting in a corner booth and sharing spring rolls. Chin-Hwa was telling her about his younger sister back in Seoul when his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and something dark crossed his face. I'm sorry, he said, his voice tight. I have to take this. He stepped outside, and through the window, Adele could see him pacing, his free hand gesturing sharply as he spoke in rapid Korean. He looked angry, frustrated. When he came back inside, the easy warmth from earlier was gone, replaced by something cold and distant. Is everything okay? She asked carefully. Family business, he said. The words clipped. Nothing for you to worry about. But she was worrying, probably. The sudden shift in his mood was jarring, concerning. Still, she didn't push. They'd only been seeing each other for 2 weeks. She had no right to demand explanations about his family drama. The rest of lunch was quieter, slightly awkward. When he dropped her off at her apartment, he kissed her forehead gently. I'm sorry, he murmured, against her skin. Today got complicated, but I promise, you're the best part of it. And just like that, the warmth was back. Adele found herself leaning into him, her hands resting against his chest. I had fun, she said, even with the complicated parts. He pulled back to look at her, his dark eyes searching hers. You're really something, Adele from Madagascar. You keep saying that, she teased. Maybe I should start calling you Chin-Hwa from Seoul. Maybe you should, he agreed, smiling. Then his expression grew serious. I want to keep seeing you, but I need you to know, my life is messy sometimes. Complicated, like I said. If that's too much, I understand. Adele thought about it, thought about Kofi and all his complications, all the ways his mess had spilled over into her life and nearly drowned her. But this felt different. Chin-Hwa was warning her, giving her a choice, not trapping her in chaos and calling it love. Everyone's life is messy, she said finally, mine included. Maybe we can figure it out together. The smile he gave her was worth every risk. Things got more intense after that. They saw each other 3, sometimes 4 times a week. Chin-Hwa took her to his favorite Korean BBQ place in Alston, teaching her how to wrap the meat in lettuce leaves properly, while she laughed at her clumsy attempts. They went ice skating at Frog Pond, even though neither of them was particularly good at it, spending more time holding each other up than actually skating. One evening, he showed up at the bookstore near closing time with takeout from her favorite Malagasy restaurant, a tiny hole-in-the-wall place she'd mentioned once in passing. The fact that he'd remembered, that he'd gone out of his way to find it, made something in her chest crack open. You didn't have to do this, she said, but she was already unpacking the containers, the smell of coconut rice and romazava making her homesick in the best way. I wanted to, he said simply. You miss home. This seemed like a small way to bring it closer. They ate sitting on the floor of the empty bookstore, surrounded by shelves and stories, and Adele felt happier than she had in years, maybe ever. Tell me about your family, she said between bites. Your sister, your parents. Chin-Hwa's expression became guarded again, that wall sliding into place. My sister, Min Seo, she's studying medicine in Seoul. Brilliant probably, much smarter than I am. My parents... He paused, choosing his words carefully. They have expectations about who I should be, what I should do. It's complicated. There was that word again, complicated. Adele was starting to wonder just how complicated things were, but she didn't want to ruin the moment by pushing. Do they know about me? She asked instead. Not yet, he admitted. But they will, soon. Something about the way he said it made her nervous, like introducing her to his family would be some kind of test she might fail. Before she could ask more questions, the door chimed. Adele's blood ran cold as she looked up and saw Kofi standing in the entrance. His eyes locked on her. There you are, he said, his voice deceptively calm. I've been looking everywhere for you, babe. We need to talk. Chin-Hwa was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Adele and Kofi with a fluid grace that suggested he'd done this before. She doesn't want to talk to you. Leave. Now. Kofi's eyes narrowed as he took in Chin-Hwa. The expensive clothes, the protective stance, the way his hand had instinctively moved to shield Adele. Who the hell are you? Someone who actually respects her boundaries, Chin-Hwa said, his voice dropping into something dangerous. Unlike you. Adele, tell your little bodyguard to back off, Kofi said, trying to look past Chin-Hwa. This is between us. There is no us, Adele said, finding her voice despite the fear making her hands shake. I told you that 6 months ago. I meant it. You don't mean that, babe. You're just confused. This guy, Kofi gestured dismissively at Chin-Hwa. He's not who you think he is. Rich guys like him, they're just playing games. But me, I actually love you. Your version of love looks a lot like control, Chin-Hwa said coldly. Now leave before I make you. Something in his tone made Kofi pause. He looked between them, anger and confusion warring on his face. Finally, he pointed at Adele. This isn't over, he said. You'll see. You'll realize you made a mistake, and I'll be waiting. He left, slamming the door hard enough to make the windows rattle. Adele's legs gave out, and she sank back down to the floor, her whole body trembling. Chin-Hwa was beside her immediately, his arms around her, pulling her against his chest. You're okay, he murmured. You're safe. I've got you. She buried her face in his shoulder, trying to stop the shaking. I'm sorry. I didn't think he'd find me here. I don't know how he... This isn't your fault, Chin-Hwa said firmly. None of this is your fault. But Adele... He pulled back to look at her, his expression serious. He's not going to stop. Men like him, they don't take no for an answer. You need better protection. I have a restraining order, she whispered. It doesn't seem to matter. Chin-Hwa's jaw tightened. Then we need to make him understand, permanently. The way he said it sent a chill down her spine. What does that mean? He hesitated, and for a moment, she thought he might tell her something important, something that would explain all the mysterious phone calls. and the guards she'd noticed following them sometimes. But then he just shook his head. It means I'll take care of it. You don't need to worry about him anymore. I promise. And somehow, despite everything, she believed him. The next few weeks passed in a blur of increasing intensity. True to his word, Kofi stopped showing up, stopped calling. It was like he'd vanished completely, and while part of Adele was relieved, another part was suspicious. Men like Kofi didn't just give up, but Chin-Hwa kept insisting everything was fine, that she should focus on them instead of worrying about her ex, and being with him was wonderful. He took her to Portland, Maine for a weekend, where they walked along the waterfront and ate fresh lobster rolls and stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. He brought her small gifts. A vintage book of Malagasy folk tales he'd found at an estate sale, a delicate bracelet with a tiny baobab tree charm, her favorite chocolate from a specialty shop in Brookline. Each present showed how much attention he paid to her, how much he cared about making her happy. One evening, they were at his apartment in Back Bay, a gorgeous space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. They were cooking together, attempting to make both Korean and Malagasy dishes, with mixed results, when Adele's phone buzzed. It was her mother, video calling from Madagascar. She almost declined, not wanting to interrupt the evening, but Chin-Hwa noticed her hesitation. "Answer it," he said, smiling. "I'd like to meet your mom, even if it's just through a screen." So she did. Her mother's face appeared, older than Adele remembered, exhausted from her nursing shift at the hospital, but lighting up when she saw her daughter. "Adele, my sweet girl, how are you? I've been so worried. You never call anymore." "I'm sorry, Mama. Work has been busy, but I'm good, really good." Her mother's sharp eyes immediately narrowed. "You look different, happier. Why?" Adele laughed. Her mother had always been able to read her too well. "Actually, there's someone I want you to meet." She turned the phone so Chin-Hwa appeared on screen. He gave a small, respectful bow, and her mother's eyebrows shot up. "Hello, Mrs. Rakotomalala," he said carefully. "It's an honor to meet you." Her mother studied him for a long moment, that evaluating look she'd perfected over years of nursing and single parenthood. "You're the reason my daughter looks happy again?" "I hope so," Chin-Hwa said honestly. "I'm trying to be." They talked for a few more minutes, her mother asking polite but pointed questions about Chin-Hwa's work and intentions. When they finally hung up, Adele groaned. "I'm sorry, she can be intense." "She loves you," Chin-Hwa said. "That's not something to apologize for. I hope." He paused, looking uncertain for maybe the first time since she'd met him. "I hope I made a good impression." "You were perfect," she assured him, reaching up to cup his face. "Thank you for doing that, for meeting her." He turned his head to kiss her palm, the gesture tender and intimate. "Your family matters to you, so they matter to me. Will I get to meet yours?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Chin-Hwa's expression clouded. "Eventually, my family is... they're different from yours, more traditional, and like I said, complicated." "You keep saying that word," Adele pointed out. "Complicated, but you never explain what it means." He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers playing with hers, before he finally spoke. "My father runs a business empire, import, export, real estate, lots of different ventures, and he has very specific ideas about honor and loyalty and family duty. I'm his only son, which means there are expectations about who I should marry, how I should live my life. And I don't fit those expectations," Adele said quietly, understanding washing over her. "It's not about you," he said quickly, his grip on her hands tightening. "It's about his outdated thinking, but I don't care what he wants. I care about what I want, and I want you." The intensity in his voice made her breath catch. They'd been dating for almost 2 months now, but this was the first time he'd said something so direct, so possessive. It should probably have scared her, after Kofi, but instead it made her feel chosen, safe. "I want you too," she whispered. He kissed her forehead and pulled her close. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, the food forgotten on the stove. But outside, storm clouds were gathering, and neither of them knew just how complicated things were about to become. The trouble started 3 weeks later, at a gallery opening in Newbury Street. Adele had been invited through her program at school, a chance to network with curators and collectors, and potentially land an internship. She'd been nervous about going alone, but Chin-Hwa had insisted on accompanying her, looking impossibly handsome in a dark suit. They were admiring a contemporary installation when a voice cut through the ambient chatter. "Chin-Hwa, I didn't expect to see you here." Adele turned to see an elegant woman approaching, probably in her late 40s, wearing designer everything, and an expression that could freeze water. Her eyes flicked over Adele with barely concealed disdain before returning to Chin-Hwa. Mother, Chin-Hwa said, his voice carefully neutral. What are you doing in Boston? So this was his mother. Adele's stomach dropped. Your father sent me, the woman said in Korean accented English. We need to discuss some business matters, and clearly, she looked at Adele again, her lip curling slightly. We need to discuss other things as well. This is Adele, Chin-Hwa said, his hand finding the small of Adele's back. Adele, this is my mother, Han Yu-jin. It's lovely to meet you, Adele said, extending her hand. Mrs. Han looked at it like it might be contaminated, but shook it briefly. How interesting, she said coldly. My son has never mentioned you. Mother, Chin-Hwa started, but she cut him off with a sharp gesture. We'll talk later, tonight. Don't make me wait. She swept away without another word, leaving an awkward silence in her wake. I'm sorry, Chin-Hwa said immediately. She can be difficult. That's one way to put it, Adele muttered. She hates me. She doesn't know you. Once she does. She won't want to, Adele interrupted. Chin-Hwa, I'm not stupid. I saw how she looked at me. I'm not Korean. I'm not rich. I'm not whatever she expects for her son. This isn't going to work. Yes, it is, he said firmly, taking both her hands, because I don't care what she wants. I care about you, about us. But even as he said it, Adele could see the tension in his shoulders, the worry in his eyes. His mother's appearance had shaken something loose, and she had a feeling things were about to get much more complicated. She was right. Over the next week, Chin-Hwa became increasingly distant. He still called and texted, but less frequently. Their dates got canceled because of family obligations he couldn't explain. When they did see each other, he seemed distracted, troubled, like his mind was somewhere else. Talk to me, Adele finally said one evening when he'd shown up at her apartment looking exhausted. What's going on? He collapsed onto her couch, rubbing his face. My mother, my father, they're pushing hard for me to end things with you and marry someone they've chosen, a woman from a prominent Korean family who would strengthen our business connections. Adele felt like she'd been punched. And you're considering it? No, he said fiercely, grabbing her hands. Never, but they're threatening to cut me off completely, to remove me from the family business. And it's not just about money, Adele. It's about, there are people who depend on me, employees, associates. If I walk away, they suffer. So I'm the problem, she said flatly. You're not the problem, they are. This outdated thinking about bloodlines and business alliances. But, he hesitated. They're my parents, my family. I can't just cut them out completely. Adele pulled her hands away, wrapping her arms around herself. Then what are we doing, Chin-Hwa? Because it sounds like you're saying your family will always come first. I'm saying it's complicated, he said desperately. I need time to figure this out, to find a way to make everyone understand. There isn't a way, she said softly. Your family wants you to marry someone else. That's pretty clear. Maybe this was a mistake. Don't say that, he said, his voice breaking slightly. Please, Adele, His phone rang, cutting him off. He looked at it and cursed in Korean. It's my father. I have to take this. Of course you do, she said, but he was already walking into the hallway. She could hear him through the door, his voice rising and falling in rapid Korean. When he came back, his face was pale. I have to go to New York, he said. Tonight. There's been some kind of emergency with one of our warehouses. I'll be back in a few days, and we can talk properly then, I promise. He kissed her forehead, quick and distracted, and then he was gone. Adele stood in her empty apartment, wondering if she'd just watched their relationship end. Chin-Hwa didn't come back in a few days. He was gone for 2 weeks, sending sporadic texts apologizing, but never really explaining, and during those 2 weeks, other things started happening. First, she got a call at work from a woman claiming to be Chin-Hwa's fiancé. The woman spoke in heavily accented English, explaining sweetly that Chin-Hwa had been promised to her since childhood, and whatever he was doing with Adele was just a phase, a rebellion against his family that would pass soon enough. He'll come back to me, the woman said confidently. He always does. You're just a distraction. Adele hung up, her hands shaking. She wanted to text Chin-Hwa immediately, demand an explanation, but something stopped her. Maybe the woman was lying, maybe this was some scheme by his family to break them up, but the doubt had been planted. Then Brittany showed her an article online, a society page piece about a lavish engagement party in Seoul. There were photos of Chin-Hwa in a tuxedo, standing next to a beautiful Korean woman in a traditional hanbok. They weren't touching, weren't smiling, but the caption identified them as newly engaged. "This can't be right," Brittany said, reading Adele's face. "There has to be an explanation." But when Adele finally got Chin-Hwa on the phone that night, his explanation was worse than silence. "It's not real," he said tiredly. "It's a business arrangement. My parents wanted photos for appearances, to satisfy their associates. But I told that woman, Lee Soo-yeon, that I have no intention of actually marrying her." "You told her," Adele repeated, "but you attended an engagement party with her without telling me. I didn't want to worry you." "Well, congratulations. I'm worried. I'm also confused and hurt and feeling like an absolute fool." "Adele, no, you know what? Your mother was right. This is too complicated. Your family will never accept me, and you're not strong enough to choose me over them. So let's just stop pretending this is going anywhere." "I am strong enough," he said, anger creeping into his voice. "I'm trying to find a solution that doesn't destroy my entire life." "And what about my life?" she shot back. "What about what this is doing to me? I left one toxic situation with Kofi, and now I'm in another one where I'm constantly second-guessing everything, waiting for the other shoe to drop." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Is that really what you think?" he finally asked, his voice small. "That I'm like him?" Adele closed her eyes, hating herself for the comparison, but unable to take it back. "I think you're making me feel the same way he did. Uncertain, afraid, like I'm not enough." "You're more than enough," Chin-Hwa said fiercely. "You're everything, but I can't just walk away from my family without consequences. There are things about my life, about what I do, that you don't understand. Things I haven't told you because I wanted to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Another long silence. "I'll be back in Boston tomorrow," he said finally. "We need to talk face to face. There are things you need to know about who I really am, and then you can decide if you still want this." He hung up before she could respond. Adele sat there staring at her phone, her stomach churning with anxiety. What did he mean? Who he really was? What hadn't he told her? The next evening, Chin-Hwa picked her up in a different car, something sleek and black with tinted windows. There were 2 other vehicles following them, which seemed excessive for just getting dinner. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere we can talk privately," he said. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. Whatever he was about to tell her, it was clearly weighing on him. They drove to a warehouse in South Boston, which seemed like a strange choice for a private conversation. But when they went inside, Adele saw it had been converted into a surprisingly nice office space. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, everything pristine and professional, except for the 3 men standing near the entrance, all wearing suits and watching them with sharp, evaluating eyes. Security maybe, but for what? Chin-Hwa led her to a private office and closed the door. He gestured for her to sit, but he remained standing, pacing like a caged animal. "I need to tell you something," he started. "And I need you to listen to the whole thing before you make any decisions. Can you do that?" Adele nodded, her heart pounding. "My family's business. It's not exactly legal. We run various operations that exist in gray areas of the law. Import-export, but not always of legitimate goods. Financial services, but not always through legitimate channels. My father built an empire on connections and leverage, and knowing how to work systems that others can't touch." He finally stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "Back in Korea, people would call it organized crime. Here, we're more careful about labels, but essentially, my family has ties to what you might call the Korean Mafia." Adele felt the air leave her lungs. You're telling me you're in the Mafia?" "I'm telling you my family is," he clarified. "I've been trying to transition things toward legitimate businesses, to clean up operations so I can eventually walk away. But it's slow, and my father fights me on every change. And now, with his health declining, the pressure is on me to take over everything, to marry someone who fits into that world, and continue the legacy." She stood up abruptly, needing to move, needing space. "This is insane. This whole time, you've been, what? Running criminal operations?" "I handle logistics," he said. "Scheduling, transportation, making sure things run smoothly. But I don't hurt people, Adele. I've never hurt anyone. That's a line I won't cross." "But other people in your organization do," she said. "Don't they? That's what happened to Kofi. You made him disappear." Chin-Hwa didn't deny it. "I made sure he understood that bothering you again would have serious consequences." I didn't hurt him, but yes, I used my connections to make him back off. Adele sat back down heavily. This was too much. Way too much. The man she'd been falling for, the one who'd made her feel safe and cherished, was part of a criminal organization. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because I'm trying to choose you, he said simply. But I need you to understand what that means. If we stay together, my family will make your life difficult. There will be threats, pressure, probably attempts to buy you off or scare you away. And if I really commit to you, if I walk away from the family business completely, there will be consequences. Not just for me, but potentially for you too. So you're saying I'm in danger? I'm saying I'll protect you, he said fiercely, with everything I have. But I won't lie to you anymore about the risks. You deserve to know what you're getting into. She looked at him. This man who'd hidden so much, but who was now laying everything bare, and she realized that despite the fear, despite the absolute insanity of the situation, she believed him when he said he'd protect her. The question was whether that was enough. I need time, she said finally, to think about this, about us. It's a lot. I know, he said quietly. Take all the time you need. I'll be here, waiting. He drove her home in silence, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on them. When they reached her apartment, he walked her to the door and kissed her forehead gently. I love you, he said. I should have told you that sooner, before all this. But I love you, Adele. That's the one thing I'm absolutely certain about. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the hallway with her world completely upended. Adele spent 3 days avoiding everyone. She called in sick to work, ignored Brittany's increasingly concerned texts, and mostly just lay in bed replaying every moment with Chin-Hwa and wondering how she'd missed all the signs. But had there really been signs? He'd been secretive, sure, but he'd also been kind, attentive, protective in ways that had felt genuine, and now she understood why. He wasn't just some overprotective boyfriend. He was someone who actually had the power to keep her safe, even if that power came from a very dark place. On the 4th day, Brittany showed up at her apartment with coffee and pastries and a determined expression. Okay, enough, she said, pushing past Adele and setting up camp on the couch. You've been radio silent for days. Chin-Hwa keeps calling the bookstore asking if you're okay, and honestly, you look terrible, so talk. So, Adele told her everything about Chin-Hwa's confession, his family, the danger, all of it. Brittany listened with increasingly wide eyes. Holy crap, she said when Adele finished. Your boyfriend is like Korean Mafia royalty? He's not my boyfriend anymore, Adele said. Probably. I don't know. I told him I needed time. Do you love him? The question caught Adele off guard. Yes, maybe. I don't know if I can trust those feelings now that I know the truth. Has he ever lied to you? Brittany asked. About anything else, I mean. Has he been good to you? Adele thought about it, really thought about it, and the truth was, yes, he had been good to her. He'd been patient, respectful, understanding about her trauma from Kofi. He'd made her feel valued and safe in ways she'd never experienced before. He's been wonderful, she admitted. But that doesn't change what he is. True, but nobody's perfect, right? You said he's trying to leave that life, to clean things up. Maybe he just needs someone worth leaving it for. That's a lot of pressure to put on a relationship. Love is pressure, Brittany said. It's risk and vulnerability, and choosing someone even when it's hard. The question isn't whether he's perfect, it's whether he's worth fighting for. Was he? Adele didn't know anymore. The answer came unexpectedly 2 days later when she got a text from an unknown number. Meet me at the coffee shop on Tremont. We need to talk. Lee Soo-yeon Chin-Hwa's supposed fiancé. Adele's first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won. She found herself sitting at a corner table that afternoon, watching a stunning woman in designer clothes approach with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Adele, Soo-yeon said, settling into the opposite chair. Thank you for coming. What do you want? To give you some advice, woman to woman. Soo-yeon's smile was cold, calculated. Walk away from Chin-Hwa. He belongs to a world you can't understand, a world that will destroy you if you're not careful. Is that a threat? It's the truth. I've known Chin-Hwa since we were children. Our families have been intertwined for generations. You think you know him, but you don't. You see the charming facade he shows you. I see the man who's capable of doing terrible things when necessary. He told me about his family, Adele said, about what they do. Soo-yeon's perfect eyebrows rose. Did he tell you about the warehouse fire last year? The one that killed 3 people who were stealing from his father? Or about the business partner who tried to testify against them and mysteriously disappeared? Chin-Hwa may not pull the trigger himself, but he gives the orders. He's not some misunderstood hero trying to escape. He's his father's son. Adele felt sick. I don't believe you. You don't have to believe me, just ask him. See if he denies it. Soo-yeon stood, smoothing her skirt. Or better yet, save yourself the heartbreak and walk away now. Let him marry me like he's supposed to. I can handle his darkness. You can't. She left, leaving Adele sitting there with coffee going cold and doubts multiplying like a virus. That night, Adele showed up at Chin-Hwa's apartment unannounced. He opened the door, looking surprised and hopeful. Adele, Did you kill anyone last year? Was there a fire? His expression shut down immediately. Who told you that? Soo-yeon, she said 3 people died and you gave the order. Chin-Hwa stepped back, letting her inside, and closed the door carefully. I didn't give the order. My father did. But I knew about it. I could have stopped it and I didn't. So yes, I'm responsible. Is that what you needed to hear? Adele felt tears burning her eyes. How can you be okay with that? I'm not okay with it, he said, his voice raw. I haven't been okay with it. That's why I've been trying to change things, to move operations away from violence. But these things take time, and meanwhile people get hurt. I live with that guilt every single day. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was terrified you'd look at me exactly the way you're looking at me right now, like I'm a monster. She wanted to deny it, but couldn't, because part of her did see a monster, but another part, just saw a man trying desperately to be better than his circumstances. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough. You're the strongest person I know, Chin-Hwa said. He took a step closer, but didn't touch her. You left an abusive relationship. You moved to a new country alone. You rebuilt your life from nothing. If anyone can handle my mess, it's you. But I won't force you to try. That's your choice. What if I choose to leave? Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. Then, I'll accept it. I'll make sure you're protected, that Kofi never bothers you again, that my family doesn't cause you any trouble, and then I'll let you go, because more than anything, I want you to be happy, even if that happiness doesn't include me. The sincerity in his voice broke something in her. This man, this complicated, damaged, dangerous man, loved her, really loved her, not in the possessive, controlling way Kofi had, but in a way that put her needs first, even above his own. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I, he said. Every day, but you make me brave. You make me want to be better. She moved then, closing the distance between them, and wrapped her arms around him. He held her like she was precious, like she might break, his face buried in her hair. I'm choosing you, she whispered against his chest. But Chin-Hwa, you have to promise me, no more secrets, no more lies. If we're going to make this work, I need complete honesty. I promise, he said fervently. Complete honesty, always. They stood there in his apartment, holding each other, and Adele tried to believe that love could be enough, that together they could navigate the impossible complications of his life and build something real. She really tried. The next few weeks were a bizarre mixture of bliss and chaos. Chin-Hwa kept his promise about honesty, explaining the details of his family's operations in a way that made her head spin. She met some of his associates, men with hard eyes, who treated him with a respect that bordered on fear. She attended a family dinner where his parents barely acknowledged her existence, while his sister Min Seo whispered apologies for their rudeness. But there were good moments too. They took a trip to Providence, Rhode Island, spending a weekend exploring the artistic neighborhoods and eating at tiny restaurants tucked into historic buildings. Chin-Hwa bought her a vintage locket at an antique store and helped her put it on, his fingers gentle against her neck. They went to a Korean cultural festival in Boston, where he taught her traditional dances. Laughing when she stepped on his feet, they cooked together, visited museums, spent quiet evenings reading side by side on his couch. In those moments, it was easy to forget about the darkness underneath, easy to just be 2 people falling deeper in love. Then Kofi came back. Adele was leaving work one evening when he approached her on the street, his hands raised in a placating gesture. I just want to talk, he said. 5 minutes, please. No, she said, trying to walk past him, but he stepped in front of her. Adele, please. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but I've been getting help. Therapy, anger management classes. I'm different now. I need you to know I'm sorry. There was something off about him. His eyes were too bright, his movements too jerky. He wasn't well, probably. Maybe he was in therapy, but it clearly wasn't enough. I appreciate the apology, she said carefully, but I've moved on. You should too. With him? Kofi laughed bitterly. That Korean guy? You think he's better than me? Adele, he's dangerous. I've been asking around, hearing things. He's involved in some seriously bad stuff. That's none of your business. It's my business when someone I care about is in danger, Kofi insisted. Come on, babe. We were good together once. We can be good again. I'll treat you better this time. I swear. Don't call me babe, she said firmly. And stop following me. Stop showing up at my work. Move on, Kofi. She walked away quickly, her heart racing. She could feel him watching her, could hear him calling after her, but she didn't look back. She pulled out her phone and texted Chin-Hwa. Kofi approached me outside work. He seems unstable. Can you send someone? The response came immediately. Already done. Security is with you. You're safe. She looked around and spotted a familiar car idling at the corner. One of Chin-Hwa's men. The knowledge that she was being protected should have felt comforting, but instead, it just reminded her how abnormal her life had become. That weekend, Chin-Hwa took her to Worcester for his cousin's wedding. She'd been nervous about meeting more family, but his cousin turned out to be lovely, a woman named Jia, who worked as a pediatrician and had deliberately distanced herself from the family business. You're good for him, Jia said during the reception, watching Chin-Hwa dance with his grandmother. He's lighter somehow, less burdened. I don't know about that, Adele said. His family hates me. His fiancé keeps threatening me, and I'm pretty sure his father has put a price on my head. Jia laughed. Sooyeon isn't really his fiancé. That's just something the parents arranged that neither of them wants. And uncle, he's all bark, mostly. Just give it time. They'll come around. But Adele wasn't so sure, and her doubts were confirmed the next morning when she found a note slipped under Chin-Hwa's car windshield. Leave him or face consequences. This is your only warning. She showed it to Chin-Hwa, who immediately made several phone calls in rapid Korean, his expression growing darker with each conversation. It's Sooyeon's brother, he finally said. He's been making trouble, trying to force the marriage to happen, so his family can solidify their alliance with mine. I'll handle it. How? Adele asked, afraid of the answer. By being very clear about boundaries, he said grimly, and consequences. I don't want anyone getting hurt because of me. And I don't want anyone threatening you, he countered. This is my world, Adele. These are my problems to solve. Trust me. She did trust him. That was the terrifying part. She trusted this man who solved problems with power and intimidation and connections to dangerous people. What did that say about her? The confrontation came. 3 days later, Chin-Hwa had arranged a meeting with Sooyeon's brother at a restaurant in Cambridge. He'd wanted Adele to stay away, but she'd insisted on being there. If this is about me, I should face it, she said. I'm tired of hiding. So they sat across from a cold-eyed man in an expensive suit who looked at them like they were insects. You're embarrassing both our families, he said in Korean, which Chin-Hwa translated quietly for Adele. End this ridiculous infatuation and do your duty. My duty is to myself, Chin-Hwa replied in English, making sure Adele could understand. And to the woman I love. Your sister and I were never going to marry. That arrangement was made without our consent. Consent is irrelevant. This is about family, about business. Then make new business arrangements, because this one is over. Sooyeon's brother leaned forward. You're making a mistake. My father won't tolerate this disrespect. Neither will yours. Then they'll have to deal with their disappointment, Chin-Hwa said coldly, because I'm not negotiating. This meeting is a courtesy to inform you that if anyone in your family threatens Adele again, there will be immediate consequences, the kind that can't be undone. The threat hung in the air. Sooyeon's brother stood abruptly. You'll regret this, he said, both of you. After he left, Adele turned to Chin-Hwa. Did you just start a war with another crime family? I ended a pointless engagement and protected what's mine, he corrected. There won't be a war. He's bluffing. But he wasn't entirely certain. Adele could see the worry in his eyes. The final crisis came a week later. Adele got a call from her mother, frantic and crying. Someone came to the hospital, she said in Malagasy. They were asking about you, about where you live, who you're with. They scared me, Adele. What's happening? Chin-Hwa's face went white when Adele told him. He made more phone calls, pacing his apartment like a caged animal, before finally sitting down heavily. They went after your mother, he said, his voice hollow, because I wasn't clear enough, because I didn't protect you properly. This isn't your fault. It is my fault. All of this is my fault. I brought you into this world without thinking about the costs, without preparing you for how dirty and dangerous it could get. He looked at her, and she saw something she'd never seen before. Defeat. Maybe Suyeon was right, he said quietly. Maybe you can't handle my darkness. Maybe I should let you go before something worse happens. Don't you dare, Adele said fiercely, grabbing his face and forcing him to look at her. Don't you dare use my safety as an excuse to give up on us. Yes, your world is terrifying. Yes, I'm scared. But I'm more scared of losing you, of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. You could die, he said bluntly. Being with me could literally get you killed. Then protect me, she said. Like, you promised. Fight for us. Make them understand that I'm not going anywhere. He stared at her for a long moment, and then he kissed her. Not on the forehead or hands or cheek like he usually did, but a real great kiss. I'll fix this, he promised. Whatever it takes, I'll make you safe. And he did. Over the next month, Chin-Hwa systematically dismantled every threat against them. He met with his father and made it clear he was leaving the family business. Consequences be damned. He negotiated with Suyeon's family, offering them business concessions in exchange for leaving Adele alone. He arranged protection for Adele's mother, making sure no one could use her as leverage again. It wasn't easy. There were arguments, threats, tense meetings where violence simmered just beneath the surface. But slowly, gradually, he built them a space where they could breathe. 6 months later, Adele graduated with her master's degree. Chin-Hwa was in the audience, cheering louder than anyone when she walked across the stage. His sister Min Seo had flown in from Seoul to attend. Even his mother had come, though she still barely spoke to Adele. But it was progress. Small, incremental, better than nothing progress. After the ceremony, they went to dinner at that same Korean BBQ place in Alston, where they'd shared one of their first meals. Chin-Hwa had a gift, a small box that he pushed across the table with nervous fingers. Open it, he said. Inside was a delicate ring, not an engagement ring, just a promise ring, with a tiny diamond and intricate metalwork that reminded her of both Korean and Malagasy designs somehow. I know we can't get married yet, he said. My family situation is still complicated, and you deserve a proper proposal, not whatever this is. But I wanted you to have something, a reminder that I'm committed to this, to us, no matter how hard it gets. Adele slipped it on, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had it sized using one of her other rings. The attention to detail was so characteristic of him that she had to laugh through her tears. I love you, she said, even though you're impossible and dangerous and come with more baggage than an airport. I love you too, he said, reaching across to kiss her knuckles. Even though you're stubborn and reckless and way too good for me. They sat there in that little restaurant, holding hands across the table, and Adele thought about everything they'd been through. The fear, the uncertainty, the constant feeling of standing on unstable ground. It hadn't been easy. It probably never would be easy. But some things were worth fighting for. Some people were worth the risk. And Chin-Hwa, complicated, protective, trying so hard to be better Chin-Hwa, he was worth everything. Their story wasn't finished. There would be more challenges, more conflicts with his family, more moments of doubt and fear, but they'd face them together. One day, one choice, one act of love at a time, because that's what real love was. Not perfect romance in a vacuum, but choosing each other again and again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. And as they left the restaurant that night, Chin-Hwa's hand warm in hers, Adele finally understood what it meant to feel truly protected, not because she was hiding in someone's car, but because she'd found someone willing to fight beside her against the whole complicated, messy, beautiful world. If you enjoyed this story, drop a like and let me know what you think in the comments. Want more unique romance stories with unexpected twists? Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an upload.